Welcome back, everyone. We're here again on YouTube and LinkedIn with another exciting episode of the Top Innovator Series. This is where we dive into proven leadership ideas, game changing strategies, and of course, we hear from the brilliant minds behind all of that. My name is Josef Martens, and I'm excited to introduce our guest today. With us today is Herman Brown. Herman is the CIO at the San Francisco's District Attorney's Office. Before that, he held other tech executive roles for various organizations, including the City of San Francisco and the marketing firm Young and Rubicam. And today, we're thrilled to have Herman with us. Herman, it's a pleasure to have you in the conversation here today.
Yes, Joseph, thank you for having me. My honor. Privilege
Awesome.
to be here.
So, Herman, the topic is leadership. You're established, you're super successful in your leadership journey. And I'm wondering, when you reflect on your own journey, when you reflect on the success that you've had, what do you think is the reason for it? What are the ingredients that got you to where you are today?
Joseph, that's actually an excellent question. And as I think about that, I think it boils back down to starting off as a youth and just parenting and some of the things, the sayings that they had, right? Like treat others the way that you want to be treated,
Mm,
right? Being kind, being respectful. And in order to earn respect, you have to give respect. And I think that's part of the foundation for my success, in understanding that every member of my team plays an important role and as a person, and they have, a life outside of work. And so trying to help them find that balance and achieve their life goals and being supportive of that and giving them the necessary respect in order to gain respect and trust.
is the importance of respect something that's been clear to you your whole time, or is that something that became clearer as you grew in your journey?
Well, I think that it's something that became clearer in my journey from youth to adulthood. As kids, your parents give you all these anecdotes and things, and you're like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. But as you get older, you start dose and understanding what they really mean. Yeah, so I said it's something that I've had to grow into over time. Also, I think it comes from also being a follower, right? And as
Okay.
you work your way up within an organization and you look at how your leadership treated you or the culture or environment that you were in, and you try to take something that was positive out of that, or even something that was negative, and say, hey, I want to make sure that I don't repeat this,
Yeah.
as I get into that leadership role. And I don't want to say I was fortunate, but I worked my way up from the bottom to where I am today in being CIO. So I've been at all those different levels, and I know what it takes to run cabling and to be a systems engineer and network engineer and so forth and so on, desktop support. And so I just kind of remember how, I was treated when I was coming through those roles and
Yeah.
making sure that I have that empathy and compassion for
Yeah.
for my team and support.
Yeah. What was a moment in your leadership journey that shaped you? What was a story that you remember well and it was important to you? Something happened, something struck you, and there was something where you still go back today and say, that moment taught me something.
Gosh, there's probably several things that I can go back throughout my career. But one thing that stands out to me the most was that I spent 7 years in the military, and I got out of the military and I was working for this small consulting firm, and I was doing component level repair in the back office. And we had just hired a kid, right out of high school, and they had an engineer training position open up, and I wanted to become an engineer. So I applied for this engineer position and I didn't get it. They gave it to the kid who had just started a few weeks prior. And I was very disappointed about that because I was thinking, look, I've been here for almost a year now. I think I'm an outstanding employee. I'm doing my job. I know my job. I have 7 years of military experience and working in technology, and I didn't get this role. And so one day, my supervisor, as I was getting heading out, you seemed a little down. You don't seem like your usual self. It was like, what's going on? And I said, well, I'm really disappointed and not, I'm disappointed and I don't understand why I did not, get this, engineer training position when I've been very clear that this is, my goal and my, where I wanted to go in the organization and grow. And he said, well, well, and I can say this in hindsight, I appreciated his honesty because he told me, he was like, well, that was my fault. I was like, what do you mean it was your fault? And he says, well, they came to me and they asked, between the two of you, which one that I think, would be a great engineer. And I told him, he said, I thought that you'd be a great engineer, but they couldn't have you. And so they could have the other guy, the kid who's fresh out. He's like, because you're dependable, you're hardworking, you know your job. And he's like, and so I needed someone like that. And, in my unit, my division, helping me out. He said, so yeah, we could afford to lose, him. And I thought, I'm being punished for doing my job too well. All right. But that has stayed with me because as I think about, like I said, having my team members and my role as a supervisor is to help you grow and develop into the person, engineer, tech, whatever that you want to be, right? And as no matter how good you are, I'd love to keep you, but I also want to treat you to a certain extent like my child, not that I'm treating you as a child, but thinking about you as one of my kids as I nurture and foster my kids so they can go out into the world and do bigger, better things. And I was like, so you working underneath me, or with me, that when you decide to leave to go on to your next role, next organization, I want you to go in with the confidence that you've learned the skill set and you've had, proper leadership that you can go in and succeed at that role and that job. And then that new company was like, well, where did you come from? Who was your leadership? And it reflects back on me, right? As I tell my kids, when you go out in the world, you reflect back on your mother and I, right? And so I want my team to go out and reflect back on the organization and that we gave them the right tools and things. So I'm very supportive of my team, and I tell them, hey,
Yeah.
look, if you want to, if you want to pursue this and you want to go after your dream and this is what it is, I'm here to help you get there, right? I'm not going to hold you back. Along those same lines, is I've been in a position where I had someone on my team who was a great performer, and they came to me and they said, "Hey, we're going to leave, and I'm leaving, and I'm going to this other, organization." And so I went to the CIO, and because I was middle management at that time, and said, "Hey, this we're losing one of our team members. Just let me know. Would love to keep him. What can we do to keep him?" And he's like, "Well, fortunately, we don't have the budget. We don't have the position. I can't, promote him." It's like, but because he was transferring within the organization to another, you know, um, line of business, he was like, "I can block that." And I'm like, no, I don't want to block
Wow.
I don't want to stifle his career,
Yep.
right? He's leaving because he wants to grow and get into new things, and it's a promotion for him. And I know that he just recently had a kid, so he has bills and expenses. But like, I would never stifle someone's career. That's why would you even
Yep.
want to do that and say that? Um, and in that moment, that actually also changed how I felt about the CIO, right? And thinking about, well,
Wow.
what is he doing really to help me
Hmm.
grow and develop into my next role and into where I want to get to in my career path, you know?
Wow, that's a
So
powerful story. Mm.
yes, yes, thank you.
Let me take a different look at your leadership journey through maybe the eyes of mentors. I'm sure you had mentors, trusted advisors, or people who were following your journey. What was some advice that you got from them that still sticks with you? Something they shared with you, something um,
Um,
that you
you
say,
know,
mm,
it's funny because I never had a mentor per se. But I did have individuals within organizations that I looked at how they led, um, and thought that's the type of leader that I want to be. And so I kind of would watch them from a distance and their mannerisms, how they acted, so forth in meetings and just how they treated people. But then there's also leaders in which I worked with that taught me, a lot as well, without kind of mentorship, the leadership piece, but just knowledge wise and working within an organization. especially coming from private sector, coming from active duty military and going into the public sector, right, where things are very different, where, in the military, you used to being told what to do and when to do it and how to do it, to now being in the private industry and you're expected to be a go-getter, go out there and just, if you see it's broken, try to fix it, right? And then being in government, the politics behind, working with one another. And I think that, kind of the military was great in helping me um, throughout all of that process because at the end of the day, I tell people the hardest part about leadership and technology is not the technology, the organization, it's the people,
Yep.
right? And the military has taught me that, to always maintain my professionalism and that I do not have to like the person that I'm working with and or the person doesn't have to like me that I'm working with. But as long as we have a common mission and goal in mind and that we're working to achieve that, then we can work together to make that happen and just be respectful of one another's, difference of opinions.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
So yeah,
It's
so I say
many
that's
different.
probably the
Mhm.
yeah, that's probably the mentorship,
Yep.
leadership thing that
Yep.
I
Yep.
learned.
Yep. And it sounds like you really were able to extract sort of the strengths of the different leadership cultures from the military, private sector, and blend that together to where you are now.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that's what we all should be doing as we're working through our careers, as we look at those experiences that we have, whether they're positive or negative, because you
Hmm.
can learn from negative experiences just as easily from positive experience. Because I said if in that negative experience, as I gave an example about not getting the promotion and putting into the program, is that has stayed with me, and has been part of the fire in my leadership to make sure that I'm not doing that to someone else, that's
Yep.
coming up.
Yep. Very cool. Now we talked about your past, Herman. I'd like to take a look at today. And again, not a question about organization or project, still about you here. When you look at where you are now in your leadership journey, what is an area where you would say, I want to grow, there is something more, there is a next level for me? What is that?
Wow, just that is a wonderful question. That is $1 million question because I look at to well, it is because I look at where I am today in my journey and being CIO for the San Francisco District Attorney's Office. I have a wonderful team that I lead here. They are a very dedicated group of young men and women, and I think about what can I do or what is next for me,
In
and
terms
it's
of
hard
growth,
because
right? Not in terms of promotion or and different organization. That's not what I mean, right? I really
right,
mean it.
yeah,
Would you?
yeah, yeah, no, and that's what I'm thinking about in terms of growth because like I do, the annual review of my team, and I say, one of the questions that I ask is, we go through the review process
Hmm.
and I give them their positives, their negatives, and end on the positive note. And then I ask the question, which I've been told I shouldn't do, but I do it anyway because I feel like it's an important question. As I ask them is, as a leader, as your supervisor, what can I do to improve? Right? And and I'm not, I don't want to sound as if though I'm perfect because I know that I'm not perfect. But each one of my team members come back and they tell me nothing. Everything that you do is what I'd want in a supervisor and leader, and it's because of you that I'm here. If you were to leave, I want you to either take me with you, or if you leave, I'm leaving, right? And, and which is hard because I'm like, well, I feel like there is more for me. There is, growth that I can do as a person. We all should be looking to grow and to improve. Um, so yeah, so aside from the technology and the business,
Sure.
yeah, I'm struggling with that,
Okay.
right? And
Fair enough. Yep. And
If you have any suggestions, I'm open.
Based on the 15 minutes we know each other, right? Let me give you a deep insight on where you can change the
Yeah,
100 points where you need to change immediately, Herman.
exactly. You need to be meaner.
Yeah.
You need to be more stern right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, let me take a look at today from a maybe from a different angle then. Do you have something like a favorite leadership tool or something that you use, something that you do with your team, with your people? Something that where you feel like this is your strength today when you operate with your team? Is there a tool or a type of conversation or something like that?
So no, I wouldn't say that there's so much as a tool. It's more about just conversation. So I have a weekly team meeting with my team. Um, it's a less formal meeting. It used to be very formal when we were, in the office 5 days a week, but now that, we're in this, hybrid work environment, um, one day a week is a mandatory day in the week for the entire team. So, and that's the day that we meet in person. And I spend probably the first 10, 15 minutes of the meeting, and we'll just talk about current events, how the people's kids are doing, and you know, um, what has happened in the holidays, New Year's, what did you do for New Year's, and just have some general conversation to get to know one another, on a personal level, and keep that going. Um, and then every so often, I like to do what I refer to these icebreaker questions, which is was like, hey, if you were an animal, what animal would you be? What, right? What's your spirit animal?
Okay.
Right. And and why? And then so you hear some of these stories. Another question that I had asked one day, like if you could have any job in the world, right? I have my magic wand and so regardless of education, training, or whatnot, what would that job be? And there's some interesting things that come about. I actually had one young lady who actually told me that she wanted to be a ninja assassin, which it,
How does that
it kind
work
of
at the
changed my
DA's
thoughts
office?
about her a
Yeah,
little
how
bit.
does
It's
that
like,
work at the DA's office?
yes, I mean, she was this sweet, quiet, lady, yeah, she
I love it.
surprised the group when she said that.
I, I imagine. I
And so
imagine.
then the question became like, do you take martial arts? Do you? And she, no, I don't know. But I just think that'd be cool. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, yeah, that is neat. Let's take a quick look at the future as well, Harman. Let's say we were to have this conversation again in 5 years. And we're musing, we're reminiscing, we're getting nostalgic about how leadership was in the past. What do you think will be different about leadership in 5 years? Do you think there's going to be a big difference? What is it? What change will there be in the future?
That's another good question, and a difficult question to answer. With the us already being, post COVID and having this new hybrid environment and having to cope with dealing with people being remote versus in the
Yeah.
office. How do you lead in that aspect? And now we're throwing AI into the mix. That's adding another level of complexity from a leadership perspective, as I think in some cases, there's fear about what my role is and my responsibility is going to be in the future as AI starts taking over some of these processes and so forth. Um, but I hope that we stay true to ourselves as humans. Um, concern that I have is I look at the youth, my kids, as part of that, and how much time they spend on their phones and social media. And I had a friend of mine we were talking, and he was telling me about how he went to dinner with this other group of friends, and he has three kids, and they have two kids, and they're all teenagers between 15 and 17 years old. And he said, and they sat at the dinner table for 2.5, 3 hours. The kids barely said anything to one another. So now, dinner is over. He jumps in the car and they're going home. The other family jumps in their car and they're going home. and his kids are in the back seat, and they're laughing and giggling. And he's like, "What's so funny?" And he was like, "Oh, Dan just sent me a text message." And he was like, "Hold on, Dan, that we just had dinner with?" It's like, "Oh yeah." So they're sitting there texting each other and they're laughing and giggling, but yet had, 2, 3 hours of FaceTime with one another and just sat there and kind of stared at one another and didn't say anything. And so I hope that we do not lose that, and that's our future, right? Is that we can't have the face-to-face
Yeah.
conversation and everything's going to be via email or text or, social media.
Yeah.
Um, so yes.
Yeah. Got it. Let me ask you a last question, Herman, and then we're going to complete our conversation. If you had some advice for the tech leaders out there, something that you would suggest they could pay attention to or maybe do differently, what would that be?
My thing is invest in your people. That
Okay.
doesn't have to be a financial thing, but time, and getting to know your team, getting to understand what's important to them, getting to know what their goals are, their dreams in life, and think about what you could do as a leader, mentor to kind of help them achieve that and realize that your team are looking at you and they're paying attention to what you do and how you do things. And I think that was probably another defining moment for me once I got to that kind of lower leadership, that mid management into, upper management level right into there. As I was getting ready to leave one organization and I was asked to come up and speak and uh, which I was not prepared for. It was totally unsurprised. But after I said what I had said to the group, to the team, um, a couple of them came up to me and they thanked me for what I said. And secondly, they let me know that they had been watching me and paying attention to what I did and how I maneuvered through the organization because they worked in different units within the organization. And so just knowing that someone was paying attention to me and watching me and looking to emulate what I was doing, really resonated and helped me to understand that hold on, I have to make sure that I'm setting the right example for those that are coming up behind me.
Yep.
So
Very cool.
that's my
Herman, thank you
advice
so
is
much. It was
yes,
awesome
no,
having
thank
you
you,
in the
Joseph.
conversation here. I'm
Pleasure to
sorry.
be here. No, that's just
Uh,
thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
awesome. To everyone else out there, remember to share, like, and subscribe, and join us again for our next episode. And most importantly, keep your brain cells active.